I had worked at Damiano Vitale's house for 4 months and 11 days before he saw me cry. I want you to know that number because it mattered to me. 4 months and 11 days, 134 mornings of tying on a plain gray apron at 5:45 and walking through the back door of a house I did not own. And in 134 mornings I had not once let my face do a thing in that house that could not be answered with "Good morning, ma'am." And I had been proud of that, and I was going to be proud of it for the rest of my life if I could help it. And then it was 2:17 in the morning on a Wednesday in October, and I was on the floor of Mr. Vitale's library between the second and third bookshelves on the north wall. And I was crying, and Mr. Vitale walked in. I did not know he had walked in. That is the truth. I did not hear the door. I did not hear the footsteps. I did not hear anything, because I had been holding half a photograph in my hand for 11 minutes. And there's a kind of crying you do when you have been holding half a photograph for 11 minutes that takes up all the room in your ears. And I did not hear him come in, and he did not say anything for a very long time, and when I finally looked up, he was already kneeling 3 feet away from me on the library rug, in a charcoal sweater with the sleeves pushed to his elbows, and he was looking in my face. And he was not looking at the photograph. And he was waiting. I did not have a word for what he was doing at first. I have a word for it now, but I did not have it at 2:17 on a Wednesday morning in the middle of October. And I want to be honest about that, because there is a version of this story where I tell you that I looked up and I knew he was going to change my life, and I did not know. I looked up and I saw a man who had crossed a library in his own house at 2 in the morning and had put himself on the floor 3 feet from a housekeeper he barely knew, and had not said a word. And I understood that whatever this was, it was not something I had a script for, and I closed my hand over the photograph on my lap. He saw me close my hand. He did not say anything. He looked at my face for another moment, and he said very quietly, "Miss Bennet, I do not want to frighten you. I heard a sound. I came to see what it was. I am not going to ask you to leave the library. I am not going to ask you what you are holding. I am going to sit on this floor with you until you are ready to stand up. And then I am going to walk out of this room, and we are not going to speak of this in the morning if you do not want to. Is that acceptable to you?" I looked at him. I looked at him for a long time. I did not know Damiano Vitale then. Not the way I know him now. I had passed him in a hallway 41 times in 4 months and 11 days. I counted I made a small mark in the back of my grocery list on Sundays, and he had said, "Good morning, Miss Bennet," 6 of those times, and had nodded 17 of those times, and had walked past without noticing me 18 of those times, and I did not know his voice at 2:17 in the morning. His morning voice was even. His morning voice was clipped. His voice at 2:17 in the morning in the floor of his own library was slower. It was lower. There was a small roughness at the edges that I had not heard on the landing at 7:15 or in the front hall at 3:11, and I understood without knowing the word for it that he was not being Mr. Vitale in this room. He was being a man, and he had decided to be a man on the floor of his library 3 feet from me, and he had not asked my permission, and he was not going to leave. "Mr. Library, Vitale," I said. My voice was not the voice I used in the morning either. It was low and it was wet, and I did not try to fix it. "Yes, Miss Bennet, I am on the floor of your library at 2 in the morning." "Yes." "I am not allowed to be on the floor of your library at 2 in the morning. I have not read the manual, Miss Bennet." "If it says that, I did not write it." "Mrs. Costa wrote it." "Then it is Mrs. Costa's manual. It is not my library." I almost laughed. I did not laugh. I was not going to laugh at 2:17 in the morning on the floor of Mr. Vitale's library with half a photograph in my hand, but I felt the shape of a laugh at the back of my throat, and I understood, without knowing the word for that either, that this was a man who had walked into a room where a woman was crying and had made a small joke about the housekeeping manual. And I had never met a man who did that, and I did not know what to do with it, and I did not do anything with it. "I came down for a book," I said. "All right, I could not sleep." "All right." I could not sleep. "All right, I was not looking for anything." "I know, Miss Bennet." I sat down because my knees hurt, and I took this out of my pocket, and I stopped. I did not know why I was explaining. I had not been asked. He was 3 feet away on the rug, and he had told me he was not going to ask, and I was explaining anyway, and I stopped and I closed my mouth. And I looked at the closed hand in my lap that had the photograph in it, and I said quietly, "I am sorry, Mr. Vitale." "For what, Miss Bennet?" "For being on the floor of your library." He was quiet for a long moment. He said, "Miss Bennet, Nora. May I call you Nora?" I did not answer. I did not answer because he had said the word Nora into the space between the second and third bookshelves on the north wall of his library at 2:17 in the morning on a Wednesday in October. And no man had said my first name in that house in 4 months and 11 days, and I did not know what to do with the sound of it. And I wanted a moment to hear it again in my head before I answered him, and he did not push me, and he waited. And at 2:19 I said, "Yes, Mr. Vitale." "Damiano." "I cannot call you Damiano." "You can. On this rug. Between these bookshelves. At this hour. You can. In the morning I will be Mr. Vitale again. On this rug I am Damiano. Is that acceptable to you?" I looked at him. I said, "Yes." "Damiano." "Good," he said. "Nora, I am going to say one thing to you, and then I am going to be quiet again. I saw your face when you looked up. I have seen that face on a person before. I have seen it on my own face in a mirror in a hallway in Palermo when I was 7 years old. I have seen it on my aunt's face at a graveside. I have seen it twice in my life on the face of a man I put in the ground. That face is not a face I am going to ignore in my own library because it is inconvenient for me to look at it. I am going to sit on this rug until you tell me to leave. If you never tell me to leave, I am going to sit on this rug until the sun comes up. Do you understand what I am telling you?" I could not speak. I nodded. "Say it, Nora. I understand you, Damiano." "Good." He shifted, once, on the rug. He crossed one leg under the other. He put his hands flat on the rug on either side of him, palms down, empty. He was not looking at the photograph. He was not looking at my closed hand. He was looking at my face, and only at my face, and he did not blink, and he did not move his eyes. And I looked at him for the length of one long breath, and then I opened my hand. I opened my hand, I want you to know that. Damiano Vitale did not ask me to open my hand. He did not lean forward. He did not put his hand out. He sat on the rug 3 feet away from me with his palms flat on the wool. And he waited, and at 2:21 on a Wednesday morning in the middle of October, I opened my hand, and I turned my palm over on my knee, and the half photograph was face up on my thigh, and Damiano did not look at it. He kept looking at my face. "You can look at it, Damiano," I said. "I am not going to look at it till you tell me it is all right for me to look at it, Nora." "It is all right." He looked down. He looked at the photograph for a long moment. He did not touch it. He did not lift it. He looked at her in my thigh, and I watched his face do a thing I had not seen. A man's face do at close range in a long time. It did not soften. That is the wrong word. It got very still, and the small roughness at the edges of his voice got into the space around his mouth. And he understood the thing on my thigh in front of him without asking a single question about it. The photograph was of a woman. She was 26 years old. She had dark hair to her shoulders and a blue cotton dress and a sunburn on her nose. And she was standing on a boardwalk with a wooden railing behind her and a piece of gray ocean past the railing. And she was smiling. She was holding a hand. The hand came in from the right side of the frame. The hand was a man's hand, and was holding hers, and the fingers were long, and the wrist was thin, and there was a gold watch on the wrist, and that was all you could see of the hand, because the photograph had been torn straight down the middle from the top edge to the bottom edge, and everything to the right of the tear was gone. The tear was ragged. The tear was fresh. The tear had been made in the last 6 weeks by a person who had been in a hurry, and had been angry, and had not been careful. And the woman on the left side of the photograph was still smiling at a man who was no longer in the frame, and she was smiling into a piece of empty white paper the color of a wall. Damiano looked at the photograph for a long time. He said, "Nora." "Who is she?" "My mother." "When?" "Wine. Wildwood, New Jersey. The summer of 1989. She was 26. My mother's name is Colette Bennett. She was Colette Marchetti in 1989. She married my father in 1992. I was born in 1993. My mother is in memory care in Warwick. She has been in memory care for 2.5 years. She does not know my name anymore. She knows one word. The word is sweetheart. She says it into my hair on Sundays. That is my mother, Damiano. That is what she looked like before she was my mother, Nora. Yes. Whose half is missing? I closed my eyes. I closed my eyes because that was the question. That was the whole question. That was the question I had been carrying in the pocket of my apron for 6 weeks, and I had not said out loud to any person on earth because there was no person on earth to say it to. Because Marisol at the diner did not know, and Hector at the diner did not know, and Bianca at the memory care unit did not know, and my brother Marcus was in San Diego and would not answer the phone, and there was no one to ask, and I had been carrying the question by myself for 6 weeks. And Damiano Vitale on the rug of his library at 2:23 on a Wednesday morning in the middle of October had asked it out loud, and I had to answer because he had asked, and I had told him he could look, and I had opened my hand. I opened my eyes. I do not know, Damiano, I said. He waited. My mother married my father in 1992. My father's name was Thomas Bennett. He owned a diner in Atwells Avenue. He died in a warehouse fire in 2011. Before my father, my mother had a life I do not know very much about. She grew up in Cape May. She went to nursing school in Trenton. She lived in Wildwood the summer she was 26. I know she had a fiancé before my father. I do not know his name. She did not say his name. She said once when I was 11 years old that she had loved the boy before my father, and that the boy had died in a boating accident in the summer of 1990, and she had not said anything else about him ever in my whole life. And I did not ask because she did not want me to ask. And I do not know his name, and I do not know his face, and I do not know if the hand on this photograph is his hand, or my father's hand, or somebody else's hand. And 6 weeks ago, my brother Marcus came to Warwick to visit my mother for the first time in 11 years, and he was in her room for 90 minutes and he left. And when I came to visit her the following Sunday, the photograph on her nightstand had been torn in half, and the man's half was gone, and I know Marcus took it, and I do not know why, and Marcus will not answer the phone. Damiano did not say anything for a long time. He said, "Where is Marcus?" "San Diego. He is in the Navy. He is in the Navy. He is stationed at the Naval Base San Diego." "How old is Marcus?" 38. "He is 8 years older than me." "He was 9 in 1990. "He was 9 in 1990. Damiano was quiet. He said, "He remembers the man. That is why he took the photograph." I looked at Damiano. I looked at him across the rug at the space of 3 feet, at his face in the light of the small green banker's lamp on the library desk, at his sleeves pushed to his elbows and his palms flat on the wool. And I understood that Damiano Vitale had done in one sentence at 2:24 on a Wednesday morning in his own library what I had not been able to do in 6 weeks with a torn photograph in my pocket and a locked telephone in my kitchen. And I did not know what to say to him. I said, "I did not think of it like that." "You thought of it like a theft, Nora." "It was not a theft. It was a keeping. He kept the man. He kept the man because he remembered him. And he was afraid you did not. And he wanted somebody in the family to keep him. That is a different thing from a theft. Do you understand?" "I do not know if I understand." "You will." He looked at the photograph on my thigh again. "Nora." "Yes." "I would like to help you find out who the man was." I did not answer right away. "I want to tell you why. Because I have thought about it a lot, and because it matters that you know." I did not answer right away. I did not answer right away because I was 30 years old and I had worked in Damiano Vitale's house for 4 months and 11 days. And Damiano Vitale had passed me in a hallway 41 times and had said my last name 6 times and had not once looked at my body, and I did not know what he did in the rest of his life. And I did not know what it would cost me to owe him something, and I did not know if I could pay it, and I sat on the floor of his library at 2:25 on a Wednesday morning in October with a torn photograph on my thigh. And I understood that the man on the rug 3 feet from me was offering me a thing I did not know the price of, and I was not going to say yes to the thing without knowing the price. I said, Damiano, what would it cost me? He looked at me. He looked at me for a long moment, and something in his face did a thing I did not have a word for yet. And he said quietly, Nora, it would cost you nothing. I mean that. It would cost you nothing. I have people. I have a woman in Trenton who is a genealogist. I have a man in Cape May who is a retired police officer. I have access to newspaper archives from 1990 for every town on the Jersey Shore. I can put a name to that hand in 6 weeks, perhaps 8. I'm not asking you to pay for it. I am not asking you to keep it a secret. I am not asking you for anything. I am telling you that a woman on the floor of my library at 2 in the morning is holding half a photograph, and I have the resources to give her the other half. And I would like to give her the other half, and that is the shape of the offer. And there is nothing under it. Damiano. Yes. Why? He was quiet for a very long time. He said, Nora, I am 41 years old. My mother died when I was 7. My father died when I was 29. There is a photograph of my mother in my dresser drawer that is the only photograph of her I have. It is not torn. I have looked at it every night since 1988. I know what it is like to have a piece of a person and not the rest. If somebody had come to my library at 2 in the morning when I was 30 years old and offered to find me the rest of my mother, I would have said yes without asking the price, and I would have been right to say yes without asking. And I want you to know that you are being smarter than I would have been. And I also want you to know that the answer is still nothing. And you can say yes, and I would like you to say yes. I looked at him. I said, yes, Damiano. Yes. Yes. Please. Find him. All right, Nora. He put his hand out across the rug. He put it out palm up empty the way you would put your hand out to a dog you did not want to frighten. And he did not touch me, and he did not close the space, and he waited. And I looked at his hand for a long moment, and I put the half photograph in his palm. He closed his hand around it. You did not close it hard. He closed it the way you close a hand around a small bird, and he brought it into his chest, and he held it there, and he said quietly, I will bring it back to you, Nora. I am not going to keep it. I am going to photograph it. I am going to give the photograph to the woman in Trenton. I am going to bring the original back to you within the hour. Is that all right? Yes. I would like you to wait for me in your room. All right. I would like you to promise me you will not tear it. I know you would not tear it. I am asking anyway. I will not tear it. Nora. Yes. Stand up. I stood up. I did not stand up quickly. My knees hurt at that hour. I put my hand on the second bookshelf and I pushed myself up the way a size 22 woman pushes herself up off her rug at 2:27 in the morning, and Damiano did not offer his hand, because he understood without being told that I did not want a hand offered for that particular action, and I stood up and I brushed off the back of my nightgown. I was in my nightgown. I want you to know that. I was in a plain cotton nightgown under my gray cotton robe, and I had bare feet on the library rug, and I had not thought about any of it because I had not planned on being seen. And I stood in front of Damiano Vitale on the rug of his own library at 2:27 on a Wednesday morning in October, and he stood up too, and he was taller than me by more than a foot. And he did not touch me, and he did not step closer, and he said, Go up to your room, Nora, lock your door, read a book. I will knock at 3:15. Is that all right? That is all right. Do you want tea? I do not want tea, Damiano. Do you want anything? I thought about it. I said, I want the light on in the hall. He looked at me. He said, I will turn the light on in the hall. Thank you, Damiano. Do not thank me for that, Nora. I walked out of the library. I did not look back. I walked down the hallway to the back stairs, and I walked up the back stairs to the 3rd floor. And I walked to my room at the back of the house, and I closed the door, and I locked it, and I sat down on the edge of my bed in my nightgown and my gray cotton robe at 2:31 in the morning on a Wednesday in October, and I put my hands flat on my knees, and I looked at the wall, and I did not cry again. I did not cry again because I had done it in the library, and the crying was finished for that night. And I did not cry again for 111 days after that, because there was work to do, and I did not have room in my body for crying, while there was work to do, and I sat on the edge of my bed with my hands flat on my knees, and I waited for 3:15, and the light in the hallway came on at 2:33 because I could see the yellow line under my door. And it did not go off for the rest of the night, and it did not go off the next night, and it did not go off for the next 4 months, and I did not ask him to turn it on, and I did not ask him to turn it off. And one of the small night maids named Alicia told me a week later in the linen closet on a Thursday morning that Mr. Vitale had given a new instruction to the household staff that the third-floor hallway light was to be on from midnight until 6, and no one was to turn it off, and Alicia had shrugged when she said it, and Alicia had not asked why, and I had not told her, and that was the light in the hallway. He knocked at 3:15. He knocked twice. Not loud. He said, "Nora, it is Damiano." I opened the door. He was in the same charcoal sweater. His sleeves were still pushed to his elbows. He had the half photograph in his right hand. He held it out to me on his open palm the way he had held out his hand to me on the rug, and he did not step into the room, and I took the photograph. And I looked at it and was unharmed, and I looked up at him and I said, "Thank you, Damiano." "Do not thank me for that either, Nora. I am going to thank you for what I want to thank you for." He almost smiled. He did not, but he almost did, and he said, "All right, you can thank me for that." He looked at me for a long moment. He said, "Nora, the genealogist is in New Jersey. I have sent her a copy of the photograph and the information you gave me. She will begin in the morning. She will not contact you. She will contact me. I will bring you updates. I will bring them to you in the library, not in the kitchen, not in the front hall, not on the back stairs, in the library after 9 at night, when Mrs. Costa is in her suite and the day staff is gone. Is that acceptable to you?" "Yes, you can come to the library at any hour of any night from now on. You do not need permission. The door will not be locked. If I am there, I will be at the desk. If I am not there, the desk will be empty. Either way, you may sit on the rug. That rug is your rug from tonight. Do you understand what I am telling you?" I understood what he was telling me. I did not know then that he was telling me a very large thing. I thought he was giving me permission to sit on a rug, and he was doing that. But he was also doing something else, and I did not have the word for it yet. And I did not need the word for it yet because the light was on in the hallway, and the photograph was in my hand, and Damiano Vitale was going to find the man and the missing half. And I said, "I understand, Damiano." "Good. Damiano." "Yes. There is one more thing. Tell me. My brother Marcus. He has the other half in his wallet. I know he does. I do not want you to find Marcus. I do not want you to send a man to Marcus. I do not want Marcus to hear from anyone about this except me. When you have a name, if you have a name, I will call Marcus myself. Do you understand what I am telling you?" He looked at me for a long moment. He said, "Yes, Nora, I understand you. I will not touch your brother." "Say it." "I will not touch your brother. I will not have him watched. I will not have him called. I will not have him called. I will not have his commanding officer called. I will not have his mail read. Your brother is your brother. Your brother is your business. I will find the name in New Jersey, not in San Diego. Do you accept that?" "Yes." "Good." He took one step back from the door. He stopped. He said, "Nora, one more thing from me." "Yes." "You are not the housekeeper on the rug in the library. You have not been the housekeeper on the rug in the library since 2/17. I am going to have Mrs. Costa reassign the library to Doreen starting Tuesday. You are not going to dust that room anymore. I do not want you to work in the room where you sat on the floor and cried. Do you understand?" "Yes, Damiano." "Nora." "Yes. Good night." "Good night, Damiano." He walked down the hallway to the back stairs. He did not look back. He did not close my door. He left me to close my door, and I closed it, and I locked it, and I sat back down on the edge of my bed with the half photograph in my hand, and I looked at my mother in the blue cotton dress on the boardwalk in Wildwood in the summer of 1989, and I looked at the man's hand on the right edge of the tier with the gold watch on the wrist, and I said quietly to the empty room, "All right, sweetheart, we are going to find out who he was. It is going to take 6 weeks, maybe 8. We are going to find out." My mother, in Warwick, in her bed at St. Anne's, did not hear me. I said it anyway. I want to move fast now for the rest of part 1 because I want to save the room for the 6 weeks and for what came at the end of the 6 weeks. And I want to save the room for what happened in the library at 9:06 on a Thursday night in November, when Damiano Vitale walked in with a manila folder and set it on the desk, and did not open it. And I want to save the room for what came after that, and so I'm going to tell you the 4 months in a smaller shape. The library door was never locked after that Wednesday. I did not go every night. I did not want him to think I was going to be there every night, and I did not want to think of myself as a woman who was going to be there every night. And so I did not go for the first 6 days after the rug. On the 7th day, on a Tuesday in the middle of October, I could not sleep at 11:40, and I put on my gray cotton robe over my nightgown, and I walked down to the library, and Damiano was at the desk. He was in a plain white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He was reading something on paper. He did not look up when I walked in. He said, "Good evening, Nora. The rug is yours." I sat on the rug. I sat between the second and third bookshelves on the north wall in the same place. Damiano did not look up from his paper. He did not say anything else. He read at his desk, and I sat on my rug, and at 11:57 I stood up and I said, "Good night, Damiano." And he said without looking up, "Good night, Nora." And I walked out, and that was the shape of the second time. I went 4 more times in October. I went 11 times in November. I went 9 times in December. I never went before 9. I never stayed past midnight. He was at his desk every time I went, without exception, in a plain shirt with the sleeves rolled up reading paper. He did not once come around the desk. He did not once ask me to come to the desk. He did not once sit on the rug with me after the first night. He said, "Good evening. Nora, the rug is yours," every single time, and he said, "Good night, Nora," every single time, and in between he read at his desk, and I sat on my rug, and once in early November, on a Sunday night when it was snowing outside the library windows for the first time that year, he stood up from his desk at 11:41, and he crossed the room, and he took a wool blanket off the back of the wing chair by the fireplace, and he brought it to the space between the second and third bookshelves on the north wall, and he set it on the rug beside me, and he did not say a word, and he walked back to his desk, and I picked up the blanket, and I put it over my knees, and I sat with it over my knees for the rest of the hour, and I folded it and put it back on the wing chair on my way out, and I put it back at 11:57. And on the next night, I sat on the rug, and the blanket was folded on the rug next to me before I got there. And it was on the rug next to me every time after that, without me asking until spring. That was the shape of it. The update started on the 3rd of November. The first update was that the genealogist in Trenton had found a marriage license application in the Cape May County Records Office from June of 1990. The application was for Colette Marie Marchetti, 27, of Cape May, New Jersey, and a man whose name Damiano did not tell me the first night. Damiano brought the update in a manila folder to the library on a Thursday, and he set the folder on the desk, and he did not open it. And he said, "Nora, there is a name." I stood up from the rug. I walked to the desk. I put my hand on the folder. I said, "Damiano, I want to know his name. But I do not want to know it tonight. I want to know it on a Sunday. I want to go to work in the morning, and I want to sit with my mother, and I want to come home, and I want to know it in the library at 9 at night on a Sunday when the day is already over. Is that all right?" He looked at me. He said, "Yes, Nora. That is all right." I took my hand off the folder. He put the folder in the top drawer of the desk. He locked the drawer. He put the key in his pocket. He said, "The folder will be in the drawer on Sunday night at 9, or Sunday night at 9:30, or Sunday night at 10, or the following Sunday, or the Sunday after that. It will be there when you are ready. I am not opening it. I am not reading it. When you are ready to know, we will open it together, if you want me here, or you will open it alone if you do not. Is that acceptable?" "That is acceptable." I did not open the folder that Sunday. I did not open it the next Sunday. I did not open it for 6 weeks. Went to work every Sunday. I put my forehead against my mother's forehead in her bed at St. Anne's. I said sweetheart into her hair. She said sweetheart back. I asked her once, in the middle of November on a Sunday afternoon, when the winter sun was coming through the window of her room at 4 o'clock, Mama, do you remember Wildwood? She did not answer. She had not answered a question since 2022. I said, Mama, do you remember a boy on the boardwalk in Wildwood? She did not answer. I said, Mama, is it all right if I find out who he was? She did not answer. She did not answer. But she turned her head 1/4 of an inch on the pillow, and she looked at the window, and she was quiet. And after a moment she said very softly, Sweetheart. I did not know if she was saying it to me or to him. I did not need to know. I said, All right, Mama, all right. I went back to the library on the Sunday after that, at 9:06 on a night in the middle of December. Damiano was at his desk. He was in the plain white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked up when I walked in. I said, Damiano, open the folder. He unlocked the drawer. He took out the folder. He came around the desk. He did not sit on the rug this time. He pulled the wing chair from beside the fireplace across the library rug to the space between the second and third bookshelves of the north wall, and he set the wing chair down for me, and he pointed at it, and I sat down. He crouched down in front of the wing chair on the rug on his knees, the way he had been on the rug the first night, and he opened the folder on his knee, and he said, Nora, his name was Peter Callahan. He was 29 years old in the summer of 1990. He was a musician. He played piano at a hotel in Cape May. He and your mother met in the summer of 1988. They were engaged in April of 1990. He was going to marry her on the 3rd of August, 1990. On the 22nd of July, 1990, 12 days before the wedding, he took a small sailboat out from Marina in Cape May with a friend, and the boat went down in a squall, and Peter Callahan drowned, and the friend swam back. His body was recovered on the 24th of July. He was buried on the 27th of July, 1990, in a Catholic cemetery in Cape May. Your mother was at the funeral. She did not go back to Cape May for 8 years. She moved to Providence in September of 1990, and she took a job at Rhode Island Hospital as a floor nurse, and she met your father in the spring of 1991 at a coffee counter on Wickenden Street, and they were married in June of 1992, and you were born in July of 1993, and Peter Callahan had a younger sister named Mary Callahan, who was 17 years old the summer her brother drowned, and Mary Callahan is still alive. She is 52 years old. She lives in a house on Beach Avenue in Cape May, New Jersey. It was her mother's house. It is her house now. She has the other half of the photograph. She has kept it in a shoebox on the top shelf of the closet in the room that used to be her brother's room for 35 years. She would like to give it to you. She would like you to come and get it in person. She would like to meet the daughter of the woman her brother loved. Do you want to go, Nora? I did not answer for a long time. I did not answer because Damiano Vitale had spoken his name for the first time, Peter Callahan, and I had never heard the name in my life. And I had a whole other father I had loved and buried, and now there was a man in Cape May whose sister had kept half of a photograph in a shoebox for 35 years. And I was 30 years old, and I was a size 22, and I was sitting in a wing chair in the library of a Mafia king in Providence, Rhode Island, at 9/11 on a Sunday night in the middle of December, and I understood that a door had opened in my mother's life that my mother had closed in 1990. And that Damiano Vitale had opened the door for me because I had cried on his rug in October. And I did not know how I was going to walk through the door, but I was going to walk through it, and I was not going to walk through it alone. Yes, Damiano, I said. I want to go. When? After Christmas. Not before. I want one more Christmas with my mother the way she is. All right, Nora. Damiano, yes. Will you come with me? He looked up at me from the rug. He said, Yes, Nora, I will come with you. Thank you. Do not thank me for that, Nora. I am thanking you anyway. All right. He closed the folder. He put it back on the desk. He did not put it in the drawer this time. He left it on the top of the desk so that I would see it every time I came into the library, and I would know that Peter Callahan was on the desk, and Peter Callahan had been on the desk before me, and Peter Callahan was going to be on the desk when I was ready, and I stood up from the wing chair and I walked back to the rug, and I sat down between the second and third bookshelves on the north wall, and I pulled the folded wool blanket over my knees, and Damiano went back to his desk and he read paper until 11:57, and I sat on my rug with the blanket over my knees, and neither of us said another word that night. And at 11:57, I stood up and I said, "Good night, Damiano." And he said, without looking up, "Good night, Nora," and I walked out of the library, and the light in the hallway was on, and it stayed on until morning. We drove to Cape May on the second Saturday in January. Damiano drove. He drove the smaller gray sedan, not the black one, and he was in a plain black coat over a dark sweater, and he was not wearing the signet ring on his right hand. He had taken it off in the front hall. I had watched him take it off. Mrs. Costa had watched him take it off from the doorway of the front parlor, and Mrs. Estate Costa had said nothing, and Damiano had put the ring in the small china dish on the console table beside the door, and he had said over his shoulder to Mrs. Costa, "We will be back Monday night. Miss Bennet and I are driving to New Jersey. She has family business in Cape May. I would appreciate it if you did not mention that we are gone." "Of course, Mr. Vitale." "Thank you, Mrs. Costa." That was all. Mrs. Costa did not ask me a question about it. She had not asked me a question about the library either, or about the light in the third-floor hallway, or about the wool blanket on the wing chair. And I understood, walking down the front steps of the Vitale estate on the second Saturday in January with a small overnight bag in one hand and Damiano's hand in the other, that Mrs. Costa had spent 31 years not asking questions in that house on purpose, and that she was not going to ask them now, and that this was a kindness I had not known was a kindness until I had needed it. Damiano opened my door. He put my bag in the back. He got in. He did not start the car right away. He sat in the driver's seat with his hands on the wheel at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock, and he looked at me across the console, and he said, "Nora, it is a 5-hour drive. If at any point in the next 5 hours you want to turn around, you tell me, and I turn around. If we get to Cape May and you sit in the car in front of Mary Callahan's house and you want to turn around, you tell me, and I turn around. If you go into the house and you sit down and you want to leave after 2 minutes, you tell me, and we leave. There is no version of the next 2 days that requires you to be brave for me. Do you understand what I am telling you?" "I understand, Damiano." "Say it back. I do not have to be brave for you." "Good." He started the car. We drove. I want to tell you something about that drive, because it was the first time I had been in a car with Damiano Vitale for more than 11 minutes, and I did not know before that drive what a man was like inside a car with a woman for 5 hours. I have known men who could not do it. I have known men who put on the radio inside of 40 seconds because they could not stand the sound of nothing. I have known men who talked for 5 hours without asking me a single question. And I have known men who asked me questions for 5 hours and did not listen to any of the answers. And Damiano Vitale did neither of those things on I-95 South on the second Saturday in January. He asked me questions for the first hour. He asked me what my father's diner was like on Atwell's. He asked me the name of the cook. He asked me what my mother had cooked at home. He asked me if I had a favorite meal from my childhood. And I said meatloaf. And he said, "Of course you did, Nora." And I did not know what he meant by that, but I liked the shape of it. And I said, "Why, of course." And he said, "You are a meatloaf woman, I could tell in October." And I laughed for the first time in the car. And he did not laugh back. But the corner of his mouth did the thing it did in the library. And he kept driving. He was quiet for the second hour. I was quiet with him. I looked out the window. We passed New Haven. We passed New York on the north side. He turned the radio on once, low, to a classical station, and there was a piano piece on the classical station that I did not know the name of, and I said, "Damiano, what is that?" He said, "That is a Chopin nocturne, number 2 in E-flat major. It is very beautiful." "Yes." He was quiet for another minute. He said, "Peter Callahan played Chopin at the hotel in Cape May in the summer of 1990. It was in the article the genealogist found. The hotel summer program had a listing. He played the nocturnes on Wednesday nights. I did not put on the classical station on purpose, Nora. I want you to know that. I was not trying to prepare you. I put on the classical station because I put on the classical station in the car. When the nocturne came on, I thought about turning it off. I did not turn it off because I thought you would want to hear something he played, even if I did not tell you. And I decided not to tell you unless you asked. And you asked. I looked at him for a long moment. I said, Damiano, thank you. Do not thank me for the radio, Nora. I am thanking you for what I want to thank you for. He almost smiled. He was quiet for the third hour. In the fourth hour, he told me about his mother. He had not told me about his mother before. He told me that her name had been Lucia, and that she had been born in a village outside Palermo in 1948, and that she had been the middle child of 5, and that she had come to America in 1974 to marry his father, and that she had been 33 when she had had him, and 39 when she had died, and that she had made a lemon cake with white icing on his birthday every year for 6 birthdays, and that he had eaten a lemon cake with white icing on his birthday every year since, and that the cake was made by a bakery in the north end of Boston that had been owned by a woman his mother had known, and that the bakery had closed in 2019, and that Damiano had bought the recipe from the woman's granddaughter for $22,000 and had had it framed, and that the frame was in a closet in his study, and that the cake was still made every year by a woman in Federal Hill whose name was Angela from the framed recipe, and that his birthday was the 11th of March. I said, Damiano, that is a lot of information at once. I know. Why are you telling me right now? Because you are going to a house in Cape May tomorrow to meet a woman who has kept a photograph of your mother in a shoebox for 35 years. And I want you to know that I understand the shape of what a shoebox does to a person. And I want you to know that I have my own shoebox. And I am not going to ask you to open yours if you do not want to. But I'll open mine to you in a car on I-95 in the 4th hour so that you know I can. That is why I am telling you, Nora. I put my hand on his hand on the gear shift. He did not move his hand. I did not move my hand. We drove like that for the rest of the 4th hour. In the 5th hour, he asked me about Marcus. He asked me carefully. He asked me first if he was allowed to ask. And I said yes. He asked me what Marcus had been like at 9, and I told him. Marcus at 9 had been a quiet child, then serious with our mother's dark hair and our mother's dark eyes, and a way of standing that made you understand even when he was small, that he was not going to be a small man. Marcus had loved trains. Marcus had loved a red bicycle. Marcus at 9 had lost a father. Because our mother had been engaged when Marcus was little, our mother had been engaged to Peter Callahan, and Marcus had known Peter for 2 summers. And at Marcus's memory, Peter was the man who had taught him to ride the red bicycle in Wildwood in the summer of 1989. And Marcus had watched Peter go under in a boat in the summer of 1990, and Marcus had been at the funeral in July. And Marcus had gained a stepfather in 1992 in the shape of Thomas Bennett. And Marcus had loved my father too in a different way, in a slower way, in a way that Marcus had had to work at, and Marcus had lost my father in 2011 in a warehouse fire. And Marcus had joined the Navy in 2012, and Marcus had not come home except for our mother's funeral, if she had one, which she had not yet because our mother was still alive. Marcus had lost 2 fathers. I had lost one. I had never thought about it that way before. Damiano said quietly, Nora. He has been carrying 2 of them in his wallet. Yes. That is a lot for a wallet. Yes. Do you want me to fly him to Cape May? I turned my head. Damiano. I know what you said in October. I know what I promised in October. I am not offering to make him come. I am offering to make it easier for him to come if he wants to. That is not the same thing. I have a plane. It can be at Naval Base San Diego on Sunday morning. If Marcus wants to be on it, he will be in Cape May by dinner. If he does not want to be on it, the plane will come home empty. You will not know I sent it. You will only know that his sister called him and said, Marcus. Peter Callahan's sister lives in Cape May. I am going tomorrow. I would like you to come. If you say yes, a plane will be at the base at 8 in the morning. Do you want to make that call, Nora? From the car, right now. From the 5th hour on I-95, so that you do not have to make it from a hotel room in Cape May tonight when you are tired. I looked at him. I said, "You had this ready before we left." "I had it ready in November, Nora. I was not going to offer it unless you were ready." "You were ready in the fourth hour." "I was not going to interrupt the fourth hour." I looked at him for a long time. I said, "All right, Damiano, give me your phone." He gave me his phone. He did not tell me the number. I knew the number. I had it in my own phone. I had not dialed it in 11 weeks. I dialed it from Damiano's phone at 4:17 on the second Saturday in January on I-95 South between Wilmington, Delaware, and the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, and it rang 4 times, and Marcus answered on the 5th ring. And he answered because he did not recognize the number. And he said, "Chief Bennett." I said, "Marcus." "It is Nora." He was quiet. I said, "Marcus, I know about Peter Callahan. I know his name. I know he drowned. I know you have the other half of the photograph in your wallet. I know you tore it in Warwick in September because you did not think I remembered him. I did not remember him. I am not angry that you tore it. I am on I-95 in New Jersey. I'm going to Cape May tomorrow morning. Peter Callahan's sister still lives in the house on Beach Avenue. Her name is Mary. She is 52. She has the mirror half of the photograph in a shoebox. She wants to meet me. I want you to come. There will be a plane at Naval Base San Diego at 8 in the morning, if you want to be on it. If you do not want to be on it, that is all right. I am telling you because I did not tell you about Warwick, and I should have told you about Warwick, and I am telling you now. Marcus did not say anything for a long time. He said, "Nora, this plane." I looked at Damiano. Damiano did not take his eyes off the road. I said, "Marcus, it is a friend's plane. He is driving me to Cape May. He is not going to be at the house tomorrow. He is going to sit in a coffee shop while I go. He is a good man. That is all I am going to tell you on the phone. Are you coming?" Marcus was quiet for another long moment. He said, "Nora, I am coming." "All right." "Nora." "Yes. I am sorry about the photograph." "I know, Marcus. It is all right. It is not all right. It is all right enough for tonight. We will talk in Cape May tomorrow." "All right." "Marcus, there is one more thing." "Yes." "Do not tell anyone on the base about the plane. Do not tell anyone about who is on it. Just get on the plane." "Understood." I hung up. I gave Damiano back his phone. I looked out the passenger window at the 9th mile marker past Wilmington. I said, "Damiano." "Yes, I want to pull over." He pulled over. He did not ask why. He put on the hazards. He pulled onto the shoulder. He put the car in park. He turned to me, and he did not touch me, and he did not say anything. And I sat in the passenger seat of the smaller gray sedan on the shoulder of I-95 South at 4:23 on the second Saturday in January, and I put my face in my hands, and I cried for the second time in 115 days. And Damiano Vitale did not move, and he did not speak, and he waited, and I cried for 4 minutes. And then I sat up, and I wiped my face with the back of my hand, and I said, "All right, Damiano, drive." He drove. He drove for the last hour of the drive without asking me a single question, and he did not turn on the radio again. And I sat in the passenger seat with my hand on the gear shift, and the sun went down over New Jersey on the second Saturday in January. And we crossed the last bridge into Cape May at 6:02, and the hotel was on Beach Avenue 3 blocks from Mary Callahan's house. And Damiano had booked 2 rooms on the same floor, not adjoining on purpose. And Mrs. Costa had done the booking, and Mrs. Costa had confirmed it in a small note in the front pocket of my overnight bag, and I did not have to think about whether Damiano was going to try to open a door that night, because he was not, and I knew he was not, and we ate a plain dinner in the hotel restaurant, and he asked me if I wanted him to sit in the lobby until Marcus's plane landed the next morning, and I said no, and he walked me to my door at 9:02, and he said, "Good night, Nora." And he did not kiss me, and he went to his own door across the hall, and he closed it. And I lay in a strange bed in a strange hotel in Cape May, New Jersey, on the second Saturday in January, and I looked at the ceiling, and I did not sleep. And at 3:17 in the morning, I opened my door, and Damiano's door was closed, and there was a piece of paper on the floor of the hallway on my side of his door, and the paper said, in his hand in pencil, "I am awake. If you knock, I will answer. If you do not knock, I will still be awake." D. I did not knock. I sat down on the floor of the hallway with my back against my door, and I sat on the floor for 1 hour and 11 minutes, and I got up at 4:28. And I went back into my room, and I slept from 4:30 to 7:15, and Marcus's plane landed at Atlantic City Regional Airport at 7:41, and Enzo Marchetti. I did not know Enzo was in Cape May. I found out later Damiano had flown Enzo out on the same plane that had brought Marcus in a second car on Damiano's account, so that Marcus would not have to rent one, and so that a man Marcus's size could get from Atlantic City to Cape May without paperwork. Enzo drove Marcus to the hotel, and Marcus was in the lobby at 8:41. I went down to the lobby at 8:42. Damiano was not in the lobby. He was in the coffee shop across the street. He had told me at 7 that morning on the hallway phone that he would be in the coffee shop from 8:15 until I came to get him, and that Enzo would be in the lobby of the hotel where he could see the front door, and that if I needed either of them, I only had to walk out onto the sidewalk and one of them would come. He had said, "Nora, this is your morning." It is not my morning. I am the driver today. Do you understand me? And I had said yes. I walked in the lobby at 8:42. Marcus was standing by the fireplace. He was in civilian clothes, dark jeans, a gray sweater, a navy coat over his arm. And he was 38 years old, and he had our mother's dark hair with gray at the temples, and he had our father's shoulders, and he had a small scar on the side of his neck I had never seen before. And he had a leather wallet in his right hand, and he was holding the wallet the way a man holds a wallet he has taken out and cannot put back. And he looked up when I walked in, and he saw me, and his mouth did a thing, and he crossed the lobby, and he did not hug me right away. And he stopped 1 foot from me, and he said, "Nora, Marcus, I have not seen you since 2019. I know. You look. Do not, Marcus." He almost laughed. He said, "You look like Mom, Nora." That is what I was going to say. "You look like Mom in 1989. I looked at him. I said, "Come here, Marcus." He came here. He hugged me the way you hug your sister when you have not hugged her in 6 years, and you did not know until this morning that you needed to. And he did not cry because Marcus does not cry, but his shoulders did a thing that I have seen only twice on my brother in my life. And he did the thing on my shoulder, and he stood up, and he wiped his face with the back of his hand the same way I had wiped mine the day before on the shoulder of I-95, and he said, "All right, Nora, where is the sister?" 3 blocks up, Beach Avenue. She's expecting us at 10. That is an hour. That is an hour. Walk with me, Nora. We walked. We walked out of the hotel and up Beach Avenue with the ocean on our right, and the sky was gray, the way the sky is gray in Cape May in January, and there was salt in the air, and the boardwalk was mostly empty, and we walked slow, and Marcus took the wallet out of his back pocket, and he opened it, and he took out the other half of the photograph, and he handed it to me, and he did not say anything. I took the photograph. It was creased. It had been folded once in the wallet. Along a line there was not the original tear, and it had been unfolded and refolded many times, and the edges were soft. The photograph was of a young man on a boardwalk. He was 29 years old. He was wearing a white cotton shirt open at the collar and dark trousers, and he had light brown hair and a summer beard along his jaw, and he had a gold watch on his left wrist that came into the tear at the left edge of the frame, and he was smiling at the woman on the other side of the tear who was no longer there, and he was holding her hand. He looked like a man. He looked like a man who had loved a woman named Colette Marchetti in the summer of 1989 on a boardwalk in Wildwood, and who had been going to marry her in 12 days, and who had drowned. You looked like a man Marcus had learned to ride a red bicycle from. He looked like a man who was not my father, and who was not going to be my father, and who I had never known, and who I was carrying in the palm of my hand at 9:04 on the second Sunday in January on the boardwalk in Cape May, 35 years after his sister had put his half in his shoebox and closed the lid. I looked at Marcus. Marcus. Yes. Tell me about him. Marcus told me about him. Marcus told me about him for the next 47 minutes, while we walked to a bench on the boardwalk and sat down, and while we watched the ocean. And Marcus told me that Peter had taught him to ride a bicycle in the parking lot behind the hotel where Peter played piano, and that Peter had put a playing card in the spokes of the bicycle so that it would make a sound when Marcus rode it, and that Marcus had ridden that bicycle around Wildwood for 2 summers, and that after Peter drowned, Marcus had ridden the bicycle down to the ocean at 8 years old in September of 1990, and Marcus had ridden it into the water up to the pedals and had let go of it, and had walked home wet, and had never told my mother he had done that, and had never told anyone he had done that until he told me at 9:17 on the second Sunday in January, on a bench on the boardwalk in Cape May 35 years later, and I sat next to my brother in a navy coat with half a photograph in one hand and the other half in the other. And I looked at the ocean, and I put my head on his shoulder, and he put his arm around me, and he said, "Nora, I am sorry I tore it." I know, Marcus. I did not know how to tell you about him. I know. I did not know if Mom had ever told you about him. She had not. I know. We sat on the bench until 9:53. At 9:53 we stood up. We walked 3 blocks to the house on Beach Avenue. It was a small yellow house with white trim and a wooden gate and a wreath still on the door from Christmas. Mary Callahan opened the door before I knocked. She was 52. She had light brown hair with gray in it. She had her brother's mouth. She had a wooden shoebox in her hands. She had been standing behind the door, and she opened the door before I knocked, because she had seen us coming up the walk from the front window, and she had been at the front window since 8 in the morning. As she said, "You are Colette's daughter." "Yes, I am Nora. And this is Marcus." Marcus said, "Ma'am." Mary Callahan looked at Marcus for a long moment. She said, "You are the boy on the bicycle." Marcus said, "Yes, ma'am." She stepped back from the door. She said, "Come inside, both of you. Come inside, both of you. Come inside. I've been waiting for the both of you for 35 years. We went inside. I'm going to skip forward now because Mary Callahan's morning is her morning to tell in a story that is not this one. And because what I want to tell you next is what happened after we came out of that house at 1:17 on the second Sunday in January. And it is what I want you to remember. And it is what I want the record to show. We came out of the house with 2 half photographs in Mary's shoebox sitting side by side, no longer wrapped in tissue paper, no longer at the bottom of anything, and Mary had told us that she wanted us to have them both. And Mary had told us that she was going to hold on to the shoebox itself because the shoebox had been hers since 1990, and the shoebox was not part of the deal, and Mary had said, "Take them home. Put them in a frame. Have them mended by a person who mends things. Do not tape them. Do not glue them. Have them mended." And I had said yes, and Mary had walked us out to the wooden gate, and Mary had hugged me for a long moment, and Mary had put her hand on Marcus's cheek, and Mary had said, "Peter would have been very glad to see the man you turned into Marcus Bennett." And Marcus had put his hand over hers, and I had not cried, and Marcus had not cried. And we had walked back down Beach Avenue to the hotel with the 2 halves of the photograph on top of each other in a small paper envelope in my coat pocket. And Damiano was standing on the sidewalk in front of the coffee shop across the street when we came around the corner. He had a coffee in his hand. He was not looking at his phone. He was looking up the sidewalk. He had been looking up the sidewalk for however long we had been in Mary Callahan's house, and I understood, walking toward him with my brother on my left side, that Damiano Vitale had stood on a sidewalk in Cape May, New Jersey for 3 hours and 11 minutes in the middle of January with a paper coffee cup in his hand, waiting for a woman he had known since October to come around a corner, and he had not gone inside once because he had wanted her to be able to see him from the top of the street. Marcus stopped walking when he saw Damiano. He said, "Nora." I said, "Yes. That is the friend. That is the friend. Nora, that is Damiano Vitale." I stopped walking. I looked at Marcus. I said, "Marcus, you know who he is." "Nora, I am a chief in the Navy. I have been read into things I did not ask to be read into. Yes, I know who he is. Marcus. Yes. He has not asked me for a single thing in 4 months. I want you to know that before you go across the street." Marcus looked at me for a long moment. He said, "Nora, I know what a man looks like when he has not asked a woman for anything. That man on that sidewalk has not asked you for anything. I can see it from here. Come on." We crossed the street. Damiano did not walk toward us. He waited on the sidewalk. He put down the coffee on the small round table outside the coffee shop, and he wiped his hand on his coat. And he put his hand out and he said, "You are Marcus." Marcus shook his hand. He said, "You are Damiano Vitale." "Yes." "You brought my sister to Cape May." "Yes." "You put a plane on a base for me." "Yes." Marcus looked at him for a long moment. He said, "Mr. Vitale, I do not know you. I have heard things I do not know are true and I do not know are false, and I am going to set those things aside for right now, and I am going to shake your hand, because you did a thing for my sister that nobody in her life has ever done for her. Are we clear?" "We are clear, Chief Bennett. Are we clear that if I hear from her that you have done a thing to her that a man in your line of work sometimes does, I am going to come to Providence, and I am going to find you, and I am going to do a thing to you that a man in my line of work is trained to do?" "We are clear on that too, Chief Bennett." Marcus looked at him for another long moment. He said, "All right, good." He let go of Damiano's hand. He said, "Nora, I am going to walk down to the water for a minute. I am going to come back. You two eat lunch. I will meet you back here in an hour." Marcus walked down to the water. Damiano looked at me. He said, "Nora, he is a good man." "Yes, Damiano, he loves you." "Yes, Damiano, he was going to threaten me. I wanted him to. Do you understand what I am telling you?" "Yes, Damiano." "Good." He looked at me for a long moment. He said, "Nora, do you have both halves?" I took the envelope out of my coat pocket. I opened it. I took out the two halves. I put them together on my palm along the original tier. The woman in the blue cotton dress with the sunburn on her nose in the summer of 1989 was holding the hand of a young man in a white cotton shirt with a summer beard and a gold watch on his wrist, and both of them were smiling, and the boardwalk went behind them in one clean line, and the ocean went behind them in one clean line, and the sky went behind them in one clean line. And my mother was whole, and Peter Callahan was whole, and the photograph was whole in the palm of my hand. And it was a photograph again. And I looked up at Damiano, and I did not cry. And he did not cry, and he said quietly, "Nora, that is a beautiful photograph." "Yes, Damiano. When we get home, I know a woman in the north end of Boston. Her name is Serafina. She mends photographs. She does not tape. She does not glue. She uses a paper that is made in a small town in Umbria and a rice paste that is made by a monk in Assisi. It takes 6 weeks. She will make it whole. Would you like her to do that?" "Yes, Damiano." "Good." I put the two halves back in the envelope. I put the envelope back in my coat pocket. I kept my hand on the envelope in my coat pocket. Damiano and I ate lunch. Marcus came back. We ate lunch again, all three of us, in the hotel dining room. And Marcus asked Damiano questions about the drive down and about the plane and about the coffee shop. And Damiano answered every question Marcus asked. And Damiano did not ask Marcus a single question in return, because Damiano understood that Marcus was asking questions to figure out whether he could trust Damiano. And Damiano understood that the only way Marcus was going to figure that out was to be given the space to ask. And I sat between them, and I ate a bowl of clam chowder. And at 3:41, Marcus stood up and he said, "I have to be back at the base tomorrow morning." Damiano said, "Enzo will drive you to the plane at 4. It leaves at 5. You will be at the base by 10 Pacific. "All right." Marcus put out his hand to Damiano. Damiano stood up. They shook hands. Marcus said, "Mr. Vitale, Chief Bennett, take care of her." "Yes, Chief Bennett. I mean it. I know you mean it." Marcus hugged me at the door of the hotel at 3:53 on the second Sunday in January. He said it at the top of my hair, "Nora, call me. I mean it. Every Sunday. Not every other. Every Sunday. If you skip one, I will come find you. Are we clear?" "We are clear, Marcus." "I love you, Nora." "I love you, Marcus." He walked out to the car with Enzo. Enzo tipped his hat to me from the driver's side. They drove away. Damiano and I drove back to Providence on Monday morning. We stopped at a diner in Vineland, New Jersey for pancakes at 9:07. We stopped in New Haven, Connecticut for gas at 2:11. We arrived at the estate on Prospect Street at 5:43. Mrs. Costa was in the front hall. She had the front door open before Damiano put his hand on the knob. She said, "Welcome home, Mr. Vitale. Welcome home, Miss Bennet." I said, "Thank you, Mrs. Costa." I went upstairs. I put the envelope with the 2 halves of the photograph on the top of my dresser in the room on the 3rd floor. And I sat on the edge of my bed, and I put my hands flat on my knees, and I looked at the wall, and at 6:08, Damiano knocked on my door. I opened it. He was in the plain white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He had a small wooden box in his hand. He said, "Nora, I have arranged for Serafina to come to the house. She will be here tomorrow at 10. She will take the photograph with her to Boston. She will bring it back in 6 weeks. In the meantime, I would like you to keep the halves in this box. It is a wooden box. It is lined with soft cloth. I bought it in Florence in 2011. I have not used it. I would like you to use it." He held it out. I took it. I said, "Damiano." "Yes." "Come inside." He came inside. He did not close the door behind him. He left it half open. He stood in the middle of the small room on the 3rd floor of his own house, and he looked at me, and I put the wooden box on my dresser next to the paper envelope, and I turned around, and I looked at him, and I said, "Damiano, I want to tell you what happened on the boardwalk this morning." "All right." Marcus told me a thing that Peter Callahan did that Marcus has not told anyone in 35 years. Marcus put his brother down. Not the way you put a man down in your line of work. He put him down the way you put down a heavy thing you have been carrying by yourself for a long time. I saw him do it. I do not think Marcus knew he did it. I think Marcus thinks he was talking. He was not talking. He was putting a man down. Do you understand what I am telling you? Yes, Nora, I want to put a man down too. All right, not Peter. Peter's not mine to put down. Peter is my mother's, and my mother put him down 35 years ago and did not tell me she had. The man I want to put down is my father, Thomas Bennet. I have been carrying him since 2011. I've been carrying him the way Marcus was carrying Peter. I did not know I was carrying him. I found out at 9:17 this morning on a bench on the boardwalk. I would like to put him down. I do not know how. I do not know when. I do not know if I am going to be able to do it in a day. I might need 6 weeks. I might need 6 months. I might need 6 years. I am telling you this because you have been on the rug of your library for 4 months, and you have not asked me for anything. And I am not going to be able to give you what a woman like me would give a man like you until I have put him down, and I would like you to know that I understand that. And I would like you to know that I am going to do the work, and I would like you to wait for me. Will you wait for me, Damiano? He looked at me for a very long time. He said, "Nora, I have been waiting for you since October. I am going to keep waiting. I am not going anywhere. I do not need you to be in a hurry. I do not need you to give me anything. I do not need you to put your father down for me. I want you to put him down for you. When you have put him down, you will know it, and I will know it, and we will figure out what comes after that when we get there. That is the offer. Do you accept it?" I said. "I accept it, Damiano." He nodded. He said, "Good night, Nora." He walked out. He closed the door behind him. He did not lock it. He had never locked a door of mine. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time. At 7:15, I stood up. I went down to the library. Damiano was at his desk in the plain white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, reading paper. He said, without looking up, "Good evening, Nora. The rug is yours." I did not sit on the rug. I walked to the desk. I put my hand on the desk. I said, "Damiano, come to Warwick with me on Sunday." He looked up. He said, "Yes, Nora. I want you to meet my mother. She is not going to know your name. She is going to say sweetheart to you. She says sweetheart to everybody. She is not going to know what I have done today. She is not going to know the photograph is whole. I am going to bring the photograph anyway. In your wooden box. I am going to put the box on the small table in her room. I am not going to open it. I am going to sit next to her, and I am going to put my forehead against her forehead, and I am going to say sweetheart into her hair. And I'm going to tell her quietly that Peter is whole again, and that Marcus is whole again, and that I am whole enough, and that I would like her to meet the man who sat on the floor of a library at 2 in the morning while I cried. And I am going to wait, and I would like you to be in the chair on the other side of the bed. Is that all right? That is all right, Nora. You are going to speak to her in Italian if she looks at you. Yes, Nora. I do not know what you are going to say. I will know when she looks at me. All right. I did not cry. I stood at the desk of Damiano Vitale in his library on the second floor of his house on Prospect Street on the hill in Providence, Rhode Island, at 7:21 on the second Monday in January, and I did not cry. And Damiano stood up from the desk, and he came around it, and he stopped 1 foot from me, and he did not close the distance, and I closed the distance. I closed the distance. I put my forehead against his chest. He put his hand on the back of my head. He did not kiss the top of my hair. He did not kiss my forehead. He did not kiss my mouth. He put his hand on the back of my head, and he held it there, and I stood in the library of a Mafia king with my forehead against his chest at 7:22 on a Monday night in January, and I was 30 years old, and I was a size 22, and I had a wooden box on my dresser upstairs with a whole photograph in it, and I had a brother on a plane over Ohio, and I had a mother in Warwick who was asleep, and I had a father I was going to put down over 6 weeks or 6 months or 6 years, and I had a man with his hand on the back of my head who was going to wait. And I stayed like that for a long time. And Damiano did not move, and I did not move. And at 7:41, I lifted my head, and I stepped back, and I said, "Good night, Damiano." "Good night, Nora." I walked out of the library. I went up to my room. I sat on the edge of my bed. I opened the wooden box on my dresser. I looked at the 2 halves of the photograph inside, and I closed the box, so I put my hand flat on the lid, and I said, "All right, sweetheart, all right." We went to Ward that Sunday. My mother looked at Damiano at 10:43 on the 4th Sunday in January. She looked at him for 1 minute and 11 seconds. I counted. I could not help counting. "That is who I am," she said quietly, in a voice I had not heard my mother use since 2019. One word. She said, "Tesoro." Damiano closed his eyes. He did not open them for a long time. When he opened them, he looked at me across my mother's bed, and he said, quietly, "Nora, your mother has kind eyes." I said, "I know she does, Damiano. I know she does, too." We stayed for 2 hours. He read to her. He read her a piece of an Italian poem. He read it slowly. She did not look at him again after the Tesoro, but she turned her head to the window and she watched the chickadee at the bird feeder that had been moved to her window the previous September on Damiano's instruction, at which I did not know until then had been Damiano's instruction, and Damiano read. And I sat next to my mother's bed with my hand on her hand, and at 12:43 we left, and Damiano drove me home in the smaller gray sedan. And he did not turn on the radio, and I sat in the passenger seat with my hand on his hand on the gear shift. And I did not cry, and he did not cry. 6 weeks later, Serafina brought the photograph back. It was mended. The tear was still there, if you knew where to look. The tear had been closed with a paper made in a small town in Umbria and a rice paste made by a monk in Assisi, and it was a soft ivory line down the middle of the picture. And it did not hide the tear, and it did not pretend the tear had not happened, and it held the 2 halves together as one photograph. And my mother in the blue cotton dress with the sunburn on her nose held the hand of Peter Callahan in the white cotton shirt with the summer beard on the boardwalk in Wildwood in the summer of 1989. And they were both smiling, and the ivory line ran down between them. And Damiano had it framed in a plain silver frame, the same size as the frame on his mantel, with the picture of his mother in it. And he put the frame on the mantel of the library next to a second frame, a frame I had not seen before, that had a picture of my father in it, a picture I had not known Damiano had gotten a picture. Mrs. Pone Costa had gotten for him from the Bennett family archive at St. Anne's Parish, where my father had been on the parish council, a picture of my father in 2009 at the counter of the diner on Atwell's with a cup of coffee halfway to his mouth. And Damiano had put my father on his own mantel next to my mother and Peter Callahan, and he had put a 4th frame on the mantel, a small one, of a boy in a blue sweater on a stone step in Palermo, 1988, and the four frames sat on the mantel of the library on the second floor of the house on Prospect Street. And one Sunday in March I stood in front of them at 3:17 in the afternoon with Damiano next to me, and I looked at the four faces and I said quietly, "Damiano, that is a family." He said it. "Yes, Nora, that is a family. That is our family. Yes, Nora, that is our family." He put the signet ring on my ring finger on the fourth Sunday in June on the boardwalk in Wildwood, New Jersey at 4:17 in the afternoon, at the exact spot where my mother had stood in the summer of 1989. He did not go down on one knee. He put both of his hands on my hands, and he said one sentence, and the sentence was, "Nora, I have waited for you since October. I would like to wait for you for the rest of my life. May I?" I said, "Yes, Damiano, you may." Marcus flew in from San Diego for the wedding. Marcus walked me down the aisle in the small chapel at St. Anne's Parish on Atwells Avenue on the third Saturday in September. And my mother was in a wheelchair in the front row with Bianca behind her. And Bianca had made sure my mother was wearing a soft pink cardigan and a gray dress and slippers with a small embroidered flower on the toe. And my mother did not know it was my wedding. And my mother said "sweetheart" into my hair when I bent down to kiss her forehead before I walked down the aisle, and I said "sweetheart" back. And I walked down the aisle on my brother's arm. And Damiano was at the altar in a charcoal three-piece suit with a signet ring on his right hand and a plain gold band in his left palm, and the band was engraved on the inside in his own hand, in English with two words this time, "the rug." That was the whole engraving. I looked up at him at the altar of St. Anne's Parish on the third Saturday in September, and I said quietly, so no one else could hear, "The rug, Damiano." He said, "The rug, Nora," and I put my hand out for him to slide the band onto my finger, and he did.